So the next person to lead this panel, I met, I hate to say it, Angela, when did we meet? Like, it's scary, like 20-something years ago. Angela and I met when I was publisher of a magazine called The World of Hibernia, which was aimed at well-to-do descendants of Irish Americans. Apparently there were 44 million of them around the world. And I was publisher, and Angela was head of development for a very worthy non-for-profit that did work in really dangerous areas like Haiti and Africa and all sorts of places. And over time, Angela has become an expert in sustainability. So she's going to lead the next panel. We had a very interesting meeting a couple of weeks ago with two other entrepreneurs, Miss Kelly Payton. Kelly is the founder and CEO of Malwovens. Kelly, come on, I like doing my little beauty pageant walk here. Kelly. And the other one is just terrific young woman I met recently, Prabha Ratina Asabati. I got it right earlier. This is so unfair. Say it again. Sorry. Ratina Sabapati. There you go. I got it right there. Ratina Sabapati. So Prabha Ratina Sabapati is the founder and CEO of Somo London. Come on in, Prabha. Fantastic. And finally, we have the amazing Georgia Lee Hussey, who's the founder of Modernist Financial, so that when you make your money, you then go to the wealth manager and financial expert extraordinaire and creator of a B Corporation, which is one of the reasons we asked her to join this panel today, apart from all the other fabulous things she does, Georgia. She's also amazing at all sorts of other things too, and is a very generous supporter and founder of PICA and numerous other organizations, and a good person to know.
Well, it's great to be here. We've got a really interesting session today all about impact and sustainability and building a business that is not just about profit, but also about purpose and what that actually means. So we have three really interesting people with three very different companies, each driven by a mission in its own way. So I think to kick off the session, we're just going to start with, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to tell you more about themselves and what they're doing in terms of their businesses.
Hi, my name is Kelly Payton. I'm the founder of Malwovens. Malwovens is a conscious woven goods brand, and we design products to help you live a more thoughtful and mindful lifestyle. This all starts with the materials we source. We try to source the most sustainable materials out there, and we also employ artisan manufacturing, so putting jobs in the hands of humans around the world, and that's kind of the trajectory. Right now we have exactly one product, and this product was why I started the brand. So I designed this product. It's called the Ritual Rug. I'm going to pass it around so you guys can inspect it with your hands, because that's really important. It's a hand-woven yoga mat. It's literally made out of yoga mat strips, and then the other material is organic hemp. So the whole idea behind creating this product was to, first of all, for functional purposes, I was so sick of slipping on yoga mats, and I hypothesized that creating ribbing would stop me from slipping, and it is amazing. Also, sustainable problems. I just think that yoga mats pose a massive sustainability issue. I can get into this later. And I wanted to use a better material, so I integrated hemp. And then also versatility. I want to be able to travel around with my yoga mat. I want to be able to bring it with me. I never want to travel with a yoga mat. So this is lightweight. It folds up, super easy to take with you, and honestly, it's really beautiful. It's something that you don't want to hide away. It's a reminder for you to do your ritual, your practice, and it's just a more valuable object for many reasons. So yeah, this is our first product, but and I'm going to just get more into this later, but we are not a yoga brand. I have no intention of creating yoga products, so just to keep in mind, I'm a conscious woven goods brand, and I'm going to get more into it later about what that means. And yeah.
So I am Modernist Financial. We are a B Corp, as Susan mentioned, and our purpose is to help progressive people align the wealth that they have with their progressive values. And that's a pretty problematic project because the financial institutions and structures that we all exist within are deeply embedded in the patriarchy, deeply embedded in sexism and racism. So how do we make sense of when we do make our business super successful and we do sell and we do have money, or even we just build up some wealth over time, how do we make sense of what we believe if we are progressive, and how we need to care for and steward that wealth. So that's really what our project is at Modernist. We do it through a lot of different ways. Banking is a really interesting element of wealth to think about. So we think about where we hold our cash, how do we manage our cash on a day-to-day basis. As a B Corp, we often use the term that you want to vote every day, that every day as you make a choice, you have an opportunity where your money goes and what it can support. And so that, again, is built into the financial structures. We think about, of course, sustainability investments. We do a sustainability portfolio so that we can filter out child labor, the organizations and companies that are bad for the environment, those who are positive for the environment or are making strides, as well as weapons we pull out of our portfolios. We also think a lot about philanthropy. We're super passionate about philanthropy, but philanthropy is problematic. I mean, there's some things about philanthropy you should really be thinking about, and so that's another area we work within. And then also tax planning is something I'm super passionate about. We also practice something called financial life planning. So I'm a certified financial planner, which is basically the main designation for anybody that you work with for managing money or doing any kind of support on the financial side. That means that I basically know what I'm doing, and I had to take a really complicated test to prove that I actually know what I'm doing. And you'd be surprised how few people have to meet that rigor in the financial industry. So certified financial planner means that I know a lot about a lot of different areas in finance, and I can do charts and figures and projections and inflation rates and all that good stuff. But financial life planning says, who are we as financial beings? How do we make decisions as financial beings? And looking at behavioral finance, theories of adult learning, family of origin theory, and seeing how we actually make decisions, because I can show you a million charts and pie graphs, but that is not going to compel you to make a decision that's in alignment with your values. So we really need to understand the emotional side. So we practice that, which is very unusual in our industry, because it's time consuming, so it's not as profitable, but it produces better results. There's a ton of research to support that. And then finally, I basically started the company because I realized that financial transparency is not the rule of my industry at all. And so I built the company around the idea of financial transparency. So as a B Corp, you know that there's a third party managing or judging whether we actually are walking our talk. CFPs are the only people who are giving advice. We're a fiduciary, which is a legal term that means that we have to only consider our client's best interests when we make a recommendation, which is definitely not the rule generally. And we're fee only, which means we only accept money from our own clients. We don't accept kickbacks, commissions, referral fees, which is very common. And then we're also owned by a queer woman, which, let me tell you, there aren't a whole lot of us in the financial industry.
Wherever Susan is, I just want to say thank you for saying my surname. I don't force people to do it, just to let you know. But thank you for that. So I am Prabha. I'm the founder of Somo London. And I am on this mission to reinvent women's wear. Because for too long, women's fashion has forced us to choose between beauty and comfort. And the truth is that we don't have to do this anymore, right? Where fabric innovation has gone, and with design thinking being this all-pervasive methodology, we can design products to suit our daily lives, right? So that's what we're out to do. We are recreating wardrobe classics with more thoughtful cuts and more intelligent fabrics so that it keeps up with the demands of your daily life. I actually brought a couple. We were asked to bring some of our pieces to show. So maybe I'll let you take one over there, and then there's a second one which I can pass over here. And I left it in the packaging specifically because I wanted to, should I take that one? And then you can just like pass it around that way. But I left it in the packaging specifically to show you the sort of the level of quality that we were aiming for. So we specifically chose the tailored shirt as a starting piece because it's a foundation of a building. It's a foundation of your wardrobe, a building block of your wardrobe, right? The classic white shirt. We started with white, and I can explain why we moved into a couple of colors.
But this was like the acme of what we could reinvent for performance. These pieces are all made in Portugal with factories that have more than 100 years experience in the craft of tailoring. And they're made with fabrics that, as I said, have these high levels of performance. So, they're wicking, they're quick dry. The quick dry also means that if you wash them, they're dry within an hour and a half, so you don't have to do washing the night before. If you're a traveler, say. They're also wrinkle resistant, so you can wash them and hang them to dry, and then you don't have to put an iron to them. If you really want to be crisp, you can touch an iron to it, and they're odor resistant. So this is really kind of trying to think through, we use the user experience methodology, and we held focus groups to ask women what they wanted out of a shirt like this, a foundation piece. We also have more thoughtful cuts, and this is kind of where we get our name, because the idea is that, we want our women to stride. I'm not going to be sitting pretty like a princess most of the time. That era is gone. Right? She's striding, she's sometimes sprinting, she's maybe climbing stairs, sometimes she's riding a bike. We'll come back to that. So we talk about our pieces as being made for movement. And that's why we're called System of Motion, because we are creating systems of motion. Our woman is a system of motion, and SOMO is the abbreviation. This is all kind of, our big ambition is to give you a leaner wardrobe. Fewer pieces that work harder for you, so that you have this more streamlined life and you can zip through it like a system of motion. So.
Thank you very much. So, so Kelly, I have a couple of questions for you to start off with. So the yoga mat is being passed around, and as I think you'll all agree, it's a beautiful piece to feel, to touch, to practice yoga on, to sit on, to just to look at. It's a gorgeous piece. Can you tell us what was your motivation to create this style of yoga mat, and what drove you to solve the yoga mat problem?
So I've been practicing yoga for a little over a decade now, and the beginnings of me practicing yoga were not pretty. I actually hated it, and it took me years to get into it, even though I really, really needed to get into it, and I think everybody should. Everybody should strive to get into this practice, but it's really difficult when you go to your first couple classes and there's somebody talking in another language, some type of foreign language, and they're telling you to do these crazy poses. You're not flexible, you're not comfortable, and then you're slipping all over this yoga mat, like your palms are sweaty because you're anxious, whatever. It turns into this, can be a really traumatic experience, and it keeps people away from the practice. There's a lot of stigma, I think, in yoga, and for me it took me years to get into. But finally I did get into it, kind of broke all the barriers down, and started to realize, I just need to invest in a nice yoga mat. I'll just get that nice $100 Manduka yoga mat. My problems will be solved. No. I remember I bought this $100 yoga mat and went straight into the yoga class, and it wasn't a hot yoga class even. I was just sliding around within the first 10 minutes and really upset. I think I was 23. I didn't have a lot of money, but I was really passionate about yoga. I just wanted this issue to be over so I could just practice. So fast forward, I'm really getting deeper and deeper into yoga throughout my 20s, late 20s, and kind of just having this cycle of having to buy the towel, and the towel it's nice for a few months, and then it gets so gross, and it's not made out of nice material, but it does solve a problem for a little bit. But it became this kind of cycle of spending money on objects. I didn't like the objects, I just needed them. They're ugly, they're gross, they're throwaway, they're mass manufactured. So I came to Portland actually to go to a graduate school program. So I'm actually an artist, that's my background, and I applied to an MFA program up here. And I came up, and halfway through the program, I had no idea what I was doing. And I was terrified. I was like, what am I gonna do with my life? I'm going into so much debt. And I actually went and ended up doing a yoga teacher training in the middle. I don't know, I was like, I need to calm down and get into my brain and try to think straight and figure out what I'm gonna do with my life, because I have one more year to figure this out, and it was a huge deal to me at the time. So I'm at this yoga teacher training in Mexico, and we're learning the yogic philosophies, like the really, really deep core ones, and we're sitting on these PVC purple yoga mats, which, I understand they're fine to a certain degree, but I just couldn't get it out of my head. Like, it doesn't feel grounding, it doesn't feel spiritual, it feels kind of gross to be honest, and then I'm slipping all the time. So I just couldn't get it out of my brain. From the very beginning, I always had this vision in my brain when I'm slipping on this mat. I'm like, if there was just ribbing, like I would stop. And never in 1,000 years did I think I was going to actually try to make a yoga mat with ribbing. So, but here I am, 1 year left in my graduate program, and we happen to have access to weaving classes. And I was a painter, worked in 2 dimensions for almost a decade, and I just all of a sudden pivoted hardcore and went the exact opposite direction and took a weaving class. And I literally cut my stupid manduka, sorry, I know everybody's religious about their yoga mats. I cut it into slices and I started weaving it in, and I mean, it looked like a first grader did something, but I was just like, oh my God, this is something. So about 20 prototypes later, I ended up after school, this was my thesis in graduate school. It looked much different than it looks now. I continued to make it as I got out of school and just kept working on it until I got it really, really close and felt like I had actually made a product. The whole time I was getting better and better at weaving and starting to understand the structure, started understanding how to streamline it. But it was all trial and error, and me actually sitting and making a product, and that's how I got to it. It wasn't me just thinking about it and asking somebody else to do it. So eventually, this is what came out of it, and it was to solve. Slipping was the first thing, but then throughout the whole process, I realized there was a lot of things like sustainability. I was learning a lot about the waste that comes out of yoga mat production, and it just doesn't feel very mindful, the product itself.
So yoga mats have been around for years, and considering the yoga industry is a mindful business, it's kind of ironic in a way that most yoga mats are not produced in a sustainable way or an ethical way, or does not have a strong social or environmental impact. So my question is, with Ma Woven, could you tell us a bit more about how you have embedded sustainability and ethics into the core production practices?
Yeah, so the first thing, it was really, really important to me that these were handmade. They're hand woven in India. I haven't mentioned that yet. That's where our production is. To me, weaving is something that every culture around the world has in common. Every culture pretty much has a weaving tradition, and I think that's really interesting. It's something that makes us alike in the world. And my trajectory with Ma Wovens is to work all around the world with these weaving communities. But so that was like one part of the sustainability aspect, was employing humans in an artisan way. India actually protects the handloom industry and tries to put manufacturing in the hands of the handloom industry. It's a really, really important cultural aspect. And so that's like one thing, but also trying to take out the rubber. So the rubber is, I can go into a little bit, rubber is really, really wasteful. The production of yoga mats is extremely wasteful. So even though people are saying it's a sustainable material, if that doesn't take away the mass manufactured aspect. So I wanted to take away the rubber. We use about 40% less rubber in our mats, so we can, are buying less yoga mats to make more product, and replace that rubber with one of the most sustainable materials on the planet, which is hemp. And hemp is extremely durable, and it's naturally antimicrobial, so it really helps with smell, so you don't have to wash it as much. And if you don't even have to wash it unless you really need to. And, but yeah, so between artisan manufacturing and then the materials that we source, that is the yoga mat problem I was solving with the ritual rug. But when I went to China and started sourcing rubber, I saw something that changed kind of the trajectory of the brand, which is I discovered another yoga mat problem, which is the byproduct from yoga mat production, So there was a pile about 15 high and like half of a football field long of yoga mats that were considered B product, meaning there was a slight flaw. And they have no use for these. And this is just one yoga mat factory, and there's thousands and thousands throughout the world. So I'm very aware that this is a much larger problem than I even realized. But we have our trajectory, like I said, we're not a yoga brand. We are a woven brand. And so our trajectory is to use that rubber to make a diffusion line, which would be like household rugs. So for instance, a rug, you know, a simple rug that you put under your feet when you're washing your dishes, or a rug that goes into your bathroom and things like that. And that is kind of where we're headed, is we're going to solve that yoga mat problem from a whole new angle. So it's not just production of yoga mats, but using that material for more.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Kelly's Marwoven yoga mat has so much impact in so many different ways, from, you know, looking at waste to meeting people's needs to utilizing and empowering local weavers in India. There's so much there, so thank you very much. So you have a really interesting background. When we had a chat before, you know, starting out as a writer and a sculptor and then switching or pivoting completely into the financial sector, I think is fascinating. So I'm really keen to hear a bit more about, you know, how that happened, why that happened, what was your motivation to start Modernist Financial, and then also to share a little bit about, you know, one of your missions is to kind of serve those who are underserved in the industry. So if you could explain a little bit more about that for us too.
Sure. So my background, I trained as a sculptor and a writer, and I made a lot of performance art, lots of odd performative public work that was a lot about the gendering of materials and labor. Specifically, why are some things women's materials or women's labor, and why are some things masculine labor? And it's funny how that's still kind of the project I'm working on. So I welded, I was a glass blower, I did anything that involved fire I was really into, and always sort of this dichotomy of why we would choose to gender things in certain ways. In the mid-aughts, I realized that I was not going to be a professional artist. I was not making it. I also did not come from a family of means at all. If anything, they were a negative means. It was I needed to support them if I could. And so I moved back to Portland where I had some friends and decided to buy a house, because that's what adults do, right? So I was like, I'm going to be an adult, so I'll buy a house. And it was the subprime mortgage crisis. Well, not quite a crisis yet. But they gave me a subprime mortgage, which shows you how low the standards were at the time. And I had a 550 credit score. I did not know how to budget. I had a commission sales job at the time at Design Within Reach. And I quickly realized I knew nothing about money. My mother, I had grown up with a single mom who was Southern and did everything she could to keep us looking like we had money, but it basically involved the pawn shop and TJ Maxx and really good Goodwill shopping. And so I realized that I had to teach myself about how to manage money. And I was looking around, I was like, nobody else knows how to do this either. And the size of my mortgage was more than my biweekly paycheck. So I had to learn how to manage, like literally how to manage it. And so I started learning everything I could. And all of my friends started coming to me, because I was, of course, excited about what I was learning, and I was a little shamed that I was finding it interesting, because I was an artist. I was, you know, money is evil, capitalism is bad, etc. Anyway, and so, but I was really intrigued. I was like, this is kind of fascinating. And I read a lot of Jane Austen, so I sort of knew what estate planning was, and so I started telling my friends, I was like, money is kind of fascinating. Have you heard about budgeting? And they would sort of sneak around and be like, so, budgeting, tell me more. And I realized that nobody else knew anything about money either. And at the time, a lot of my friends were becoming very successful. You know, we'd all been working in coffee shops and pizza parlors, etc. And now my friends were getting book deals and record deals. And I was like, we are seriously screwed if nobody knows how to manage their money, because these are going to become the economic pillars of our creative community. And so I was like, I really need a career. So I realized that this is what I wanted to do. So I figured out there was this thing called a certified financial planner. I sold that house and I bought myself a formal education as a planner. And then I got, it was 2011, the subprime mortgage crisis had produced the Great Recession. And I could not really get a job at a firm like my own, so I started at a big old evil firm that is well known. And I realized that it was still 1973 in this office in downtown Portland. And there were 50 brokers, there were 3 women, there were no people of color, basically. There were a couple people in the back office, and that was it. And all the support staff were women. There were men there who literally did not ever say a word to me because I don't think they knew how to have a conversation with a woman who was an equal. And I was like, I grew up with queers and artists. So I was like, I don't even know where I am right now. This is a very weird place. And so, but I still had this vision. I was like, I can talk to people about their emotions and money. I can do this work really well. I can be comprehensive. I can basically be an artist, but with money. And that, I lasted there for about 2.5 years, and then a little firm headhunted me away. Very nice people, not a very well-run company. And then I was like, all right, fuck it. I'm just starting my own company because these people are just not doing it right. And I think the motivation was in part because I was an artist. I had the sense that I can just do anything if I put my mind to it. And so we founded the firm 3 years ago. I'm the sole owner, though I have a team supporting me. And it was really with a purpose of serving those who are unserved. And that initially started with creatives. Then I realized that women are systematically disenfranchised from financial conversations. Queer people are systematically disenfranchised from financial conversations. Basically, if you're not an older white man, you are not part of the conversation. And so that has really become the focus of the firm. And so as we've delved more into purpose, it's become clear that the wealth inequality problem in this country is a core issue that we want to help with. And that's what our philanthropy plan is based around, is how to help impact wealth inequality, and specifically racial wealth inequality, because it's huge and it is the biggest impediment to financial verdancy that I can see ahead of us.
So Modernish Financial is doing a lot to kind of embed impact and purpose and accessibility to people who wouldn't normally fit into the mold of how the industry works already. Modernish Financial is certified as a B Corp. A B Corp is a benefit corporation. So I'd like, Georgia, I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about, why did you become a B Corp? What is involved in being a B Corp and how it has benefited your business?
Sure. So I always knew I wanted to be some kind of benefit organization or benefit business because, I want to make money, no doubt. But that is not my main motivator in life. I want to be comfortable, I want to be safe, but that's not what drives me. But I do think capitalism is really interesting, right? Capitalism is basically the theory that if you produce an interesting service or product, you should be paid for that service or product. I don't have any issue with that. But the way that capitalism operates in our culture now is unacceptable, in my mind. So there's a couple interesting movements right now. B Corp is one of those. But conscious capitalism, or sometimes called, what do they call it? Accountable capitalism is another term, is trying to reimagine how capitalism could operate and benefit multiple kinds of people. And so I knew that was always part of our strategic plan. We became a B Corp in the beginning of 2017. And what was interesting, and we had heard that it was really, really hard to become a B Corp, and it is, especially if you're a manufacturer. As a service business, it's a little easier, or a lot easier probably. But when we first started the company, we spent a lot of time around values and strategic planning. And because we had driven from the values, we actually were able to certify pretty quickly because we had spent so much energy on the front end. We used a book called Scaling Up, if anybody has read it. It's basically structures our whole firm and all of our strategic planning. So doing that work was really helpful to becoming a B Corp. And so being a B Corp is really just saying that you want to do business the right way, that you want to benefit the people, planets, and profits. So triple bottom line is a shorthand way of saying that. The other thing I liked about the B Corp is there's a third party that I'm held accountable to, that the firm is held accountable to. So you, there's like 220 points, I believe it is, and you have to have 85 in order to become certified, and then every 2 years our goal is to get more and more points. And so it's basically a roadmap that gets laid out in front of you of the things that you could do to increase the number of points that you have. So that was really exciting to me too, as a business, an entrepreneur who's trying to figure out how you run a business. It's like, oh, that's nice. They just hand me the roadmap and then I just do what they say. So that was really a good idea to me. How do we act like a B Corp? I think is an interesting question. So one of my favorite planning projects I've had this year is helping people with their tax planning. So our client base is wealthy. Our minimum for a new client is $1 million of investable assets. And we have a lot of clients we do tax planning with. And usually when you say tax planning, what most people think of is like, oh, not paying taxes, avoiding taxes is usually what that means. For us, it's more about helping people feel empowered to understand even how does the tax system work, what am I paying taxes on, why, etc. So this last year, I've asked every CPA to tell our client how much money they're saving because of Voldemort's tax bill. And Voldemort's tax bill is saving all of our clients a lot of money. And it's everything from $5,000 to $100,000. That all they had to do was make a pile of money, and the recent administration's bill benefited them. And our clients are all progressive, so this is a real conflict, right? And so what we've been saying is like, okay, you saved $100,000 in taxes this year that you would have had to pay last year if there weren't this difference. What could you do now? How could you use that money in a mindful way? And so, we have one client who is starting a donor advised fund at OCF to benefit women and girls. And another client who is giving money to a specific political organization. They don't need the tax benefit, so they're giving it to a political organization. So I think it's that kind of tying together behavior with the structures and actually understanding that there was savings, because it's really easy to not know what the savings was. Let's see, we give 1.5% of our revenues to organizations that are impacting wealth inequality. We gave our money to Kairos PDX this year, which is a fabulous charter school that was founded by 5 women of color to benefit kids of color. And they're really have an incredibly entrepreneurial perspective on education. It's super exciting. I think they're leaders in our community. We do pro bono workshops for communities that can't access our services. That seems very important. And we do open books management. Has everybody heard of that term? So it's basically when you invite your team into managing the financials of the company. And so you expose your financial statements, profit and loss, cash flow statement, et cetera, and balance sheet to your employees, but everybody takes responsibility for a different element of the financial statement. So to me, that is really kind of radical in our culture, where we hide everything, and especially founders, like we sort of hold things to the chest. But I think there's a real opportunity to believe in the intelligence and wherewithal of the people who work with us, and let them help us make the company more successful. So those are some of the ways we do that.
I know if you go on the B Corp website for Portland, you'll see that there are a lot of well-known companies that we know every day. New Seasons, Bamboo Sushi. There's a whole bunch of them on there. But I'm sure Georgia will be interested in talking to anybody who wants to hear a bit more about B Corp. Thank you. Okay, so Prava. So I love the fact that your brand places women's freedom and empowerment at the core of its mission. And can you tell me a bit about your motivation to start Somo London?
Yeah, so it comes from my background. I have this insight into design thinking thanks to having been an urban planner and developer in London. So for 7 years, I was in urban planning and development, working on the strategic site in central London, and had the great privilege of working with some fantastic designers and some of the world's greatest architects, in fact. And it was these architects, these men and women who not just taught me, but showed me this principle of form and function coming together seamlessly in a product, right? And what that means and what that looks like. And this idea that when these two come together well and thoughtfully, then you have a great product. And in fact, if you have something that's beautiful, but that doesn't work, that doesn't function, then it's failed. And it occurred to me that women's fashion was consistently falling short of this mark, right? That particular realization came to me because I was a dedicated urban cyclist. And I kind of picked it up as a recreational sport as well. But, you know, as an urban planner, you are envisioning the future of city living, or certainly we were at the time. This was in 2006, and for the 7 years after, there was a lot of talk about that in London. What does this look like? You know, if we're recreating a piece of the city, and we had this fantastic opportunity with 67 acres, how would you rebuild the roads and the infrastructure to support that? So we adopted this habit, and I was doing consistently 10 to 15 miles a day, and finding that I was always making trade-offs between whether or not I cycled and what I wore to work. Particularly as I got more senior in the business, right? So if you are a woman pushing boundaries in the workplace, then this problem accentuates. And I became obsessed with this idea of creating bike-to-boardroom clothing for women. That's kind of how it started. There's a little bit of context that's useful to this sort of the story that will encapsulate this bike-to-boardroom piece, which is the property industry in the UK is heavily male-dominated, as are many industries, you know, it's kind of the perfect storm of male domination because you have construction meets finance meets law, and you know, these three things coming together mean that, you know, you're constantly in that world of how do I present myself in a way, you know, like let's take down the barriers so that they are just engaging with me as a professional. And in this particular scenario, this bike to boardroom scenario that I had, my story was that I had worked hard to get to this point where I was one of the team, one of the guys. You know, I had done everything as authentically as I could to be myself, but just to be in the room when things were happening, when the business was happening. And I had done the financial modeling for this particular meeting. I've been working with the finance director closely on it. There were 4 people on that team. I was the girl, I was the woman. Who'd made it into the engine room for that. And we were going to meet the investors for this meeting, and I put on that morning, you know, thoughtfully, my best dress, right? What I felt most sharp in and most crisp. At the time, it happened to be heels and a pencil skirt. The guys turned up in their best dress, which was smart suits, and then the finance director looks at me and he goes, "Oh, so we're going to be taking our fold-up bikes. I guess, you know, my pencil skirt, I guess you're taking a cab or the subway or the tube in London. Do you want to take these files with you? You know, because since you're..." And instantly, you know, that gap that I had busted gut to close had just reopened in front of my eyes. I was fuming at this point. And that was the day that I came back to the office, and people knew that I was already thinking about, you know, changing career or starting my own business, and had asked me, you know, what would you do? And I was like, I don't know. And that day I came back and I slammed those files down on my desk, and I was like, this is the problem that I want to solve. You know, I don't know how to solve it or what it means, but this you know, not just bike to boardroom, right? It was like, there's something wrong. Women's fashion is broken. So that was... Do I sound passionate? Because my heart is beating really fast right now.
Definitely do.
Reliving that moment.
Extremely passionate. I think SOMO London is definitely driven by a mission, so which is awesome. Okay, I'm going to switch thoughts for a moment and talk a little bit about the waste in the fashion industry. So I've grown up in the fashion industry. My husband has been a designer for the last 20 years, working for some very big brands. I, on the other hand, worked on the opposite side at all the sustainability aspects of the fashion industry, amongst other industries as well. So we've always had this kind of balance between, oh, look at what you're doing, and maybe we can try and do it another way. So when I told him about the session that we were going to do today, he sent me a quote which I thought was just fascinating, but also made me feel physically sick at the same time. So the industry produces 150 billion new garments a year for a population of just 7 billion people. And at least a third of those people cannot afford at least one garment a year. So you can imagine the amount of waste that goes into producing what all of our stores are selling. If you start with where the raw material comes from, the cotton that there's a big issue of child labour in the cotton industry, to weaving that cotton into fabric, and the hundreds of thousands of people that are involved in that process to then making the garments, to a situation where billions and billions of pieces of garments are wasted every year. So, starting with that, and that was an article by Danny Parisi in Glossy magazine, who stated that quote. So, Prava, with Somo London, in the world of fashion, sustainability and ethics can mean so many different things. Can you tell me what sustainability means to Somo London?
So there are two strands that make this fact that you highlighted very sort of alive and heavy in my mind. One is that, you know, in this world of urban planning and sustainable living, right, that's kind of what becomes the conversation very quickly in real estate, because it's a scarce resource as well. And waste is something that I had actually done several projects on and understood at depth in terms of the big problem there. So I think I'd always had this personal motivation and awareness of waste, but also this brand was born in the fast fashion era, and it was already clear to me that this was a problem when the seed of the idea came up in 2013, 2014. And even as a person, as a consumer, I was disgusted by the behaviors that we saw forming as a result, and being cultivated by that industry. So I think I definitely wanted, for me it was a huge motivation to put the brakes on apparel waste with whatever we created with this concept. And the source of the problem, unfortunately, as is the case with waste in many industries and waste in general, is consumption and consumer behavior, right? So changing consumer behavior is the solution. And I'm unafraid to say that is something that we are up for and we want to tackle. I know it's huge, and I know it doesn't happen quickly, but someone's got to do it, and I think businesses are in the best place to do it. I think there's much more of an awareness now, but 3 years ago when we were saying this, it was kind of like, are you crazy? You're a startup and I'm giving you my cash, this kind of conversation. But we think we're in a good position to do that. We're doing that at the conceptual level. So, the idea being that can we make our consumer, or can we encourage them to be more mindful about how they think about their wardrobe and how they build their wardrobe? And this is, things like, you heard me talk about this leaner wardrobe concept. So I don't like the word uniform, right? But it is this concept of having a certain number of basic pieces that you can mix and match, etc. Capsule wardrobe people talk about, but for me it's really like, can you have 5 pieces in your wardrobe instead of 20? Can you wash things less? With our shirts, you can wash them half the time. Some women are brave enough to wash it once every 3 times and get away with it because they are odor resistant. So that's less water use per capita. This idea that can we use less fabric, can we use less water per capita? That's really what we're aiming for. And so this took us down this road of, what does it mean to create timeless classics? and recreate these timeless classics. Recreating, our challenge is because classics have been around by definition for a long time. We're using newer materials so that we can enhance their performance, etc. And then I've told you about, being maybe also understanding that the modern woman, we want her to feel comfortable and she's moving in different ways, etc. So what does it mean to create a future classic? Something that, we give it to you now, you're not just going to wear it for the next year and feel good, or the next 2 years. Can you wear it for a few generations, in your lifetime? If you can wear it for 2 generations with you and your daughter, great. But we haven't had a chance to test that yet. What I can say is that, as a product, we have definitely tackled that cross-generational thing, for example. So young adults to 70 plus, they can enjoy they have enjoyed our classic pieces, and this brings me great delight. The other thing that I would say in terms of this tackling apparel waste is that we are working towards producing closer to demand. And by that, I mean not just in terms of quantities, so smaller scale production, and quicker, which we can also achieve through quicker lead time, quicker production cycles, because we produce in Portugal close to that original market. But also this idea that because we have produced every piece in response to customer feedback, we can be much more attentive to what the customer wants in terms of colorways or different styles. And that's every product that has expanded our collection has been in response to a great amount of customer feedback.
Great, thank you. So I've just been given the 5-minute mark, so I'm going to quickly jump on to the last question. So 3 very mindful businesses that we're listening to today, and it makes me very excited to know that there are 3 people who are thinking so much about how to be mindful. But I just want to switch and ask you quickly in a couple of sentences, can you tell us how are you thinking about building your mindful brand in the future, and what kind of challenges you either have now or you predict you may have in the future to be able to do that?
In order to grow into the brand, that's the vision I have at this very moment. So I'm actually still in seed funding stage. I've done 1 round of production and just closed out a successful Kickstarter. So right now it's about I'm in that fundraising, that taking on investors, finding my board of advisors. So right now is a really crucial time in my business to make sure I have the right foundation to make this a really successful brand. And that place that I'm going is I would like to obviously expand my line, but the ritual rugs, I would love to have all of the rubber in my rugs be recycled, like I was talking about. I would like to move in that direction of like every single piece in my products is sustainable and either recycled or the best that we can do. And so beyond the ritual rug, which is the yoga mat, I want to create household item rugs, that's kind of a diffusion line, and then moving into like woven bags. And so I want to be working like all over the world, but making specific product that is made in a specific place for a specific reason. So not just like a marketplace with woven goods, but like this is a specific type of bag for a specific purpose, woven in this place with, a recycled plastic, for instance. That's an idea. So yeah, I have big plans, but right now I need to figure out that foundational part.
So the vision that we have for Modernist is quite big, and so the first part is that I basically want to scale the wealth management work that we're doing one-on-one and figure out how we can serve the entire income spectrum. Because I know it's possible, but I need to basically produce enough profit in my current model, prove the model, and then pivot into, my first thought is group financial planning, because I think it's extremely scalable, but I also think people learn well in group environments. And I think it would also help me with my second goal, which is to build a diverse talent pipeline, because the industry is horrible. It's 83% of people who have a CFP are white men over the age of 58. 3% of the industry are people of color. It's reprehensible. So we have to figure out how to model and be part of that change in the industry, because that change has to happen. You know, the lack of female representation is also a problem, but I'm personally more concerned about the racial lack of representation. And I think that doing some group planning could help us provide a way for talent to learn how to work with individual clients as well. And then the idea is we'd send that IP into online classes, and then also use the group classes to do our pro bono workshops in a more comprehensive way than just the 3 or 4 times a year that we do. And then I think the final thing is really how do we create an industry of transparency, because that's the opposite of what we have at the moment. And we are doing that by becoming more politically active. I think that's an interesting change in the past couple of years, that being politically active is a thing you can do. But I don't know if you all know what the fiduciary rule was, but it was the idea that you have to have a legal obligation to put your client's interests as your only consideration when you make a recommendation. Obama put it in place. He had to make some compromises, and it was going to be only for retirement accounts, but it was going to be put in place. And then the Trump administration came in and obliterated that rule. And the primary people who were fighting against that rule was the financial industry, because they make money by not putting their clients' interests first. So that is basically the rule of the land, except unless you're a firm like ours. So I think it's important for us as business owners to take up political bandwidth. And that's why organizations like Business for a Better Portland are so important on the local level, but also we are building relationships with our senators and our representatives so that when a financial rule comes up, there can be a female-owned company owner talking about why we want a fiduciary rule, not this like pile of, anyway, lots of people saying the thing I don't want them to say.
Thank you.
So for me, what comes next is, so we're looking at coming across the US, and that has given me this extra thing because, so let me explain. Being committed and passionate about sustainability, social, the triple bottom line is environment, economy, and social, right? And in terms of that economic sustainability, I'm very passionate about local economies and reinvigorating local economies, and that was partly the reason for making in Portugal to serve the European market. So coming across the US, the most sensible thing is to use our existing supply chain just to make the entry, but I would love to set up a more local supply chain for the North American market. I think a lot of fashion brands are coming up against the challenge that comes with that, which is making it then affordable, right, for the people who want this. Thank you again, fast fashion industry, for totally retraining everyone's concept of what is reasonable for paying for clothing that's well made, and pays people fair wages. So that's definitely a challenge as a startup, and a lot of effort into communication. Second big thing is we want to follow every lead on environmental sustainability and keep up with what we're learning. And that includes right now, I want to upgrade our fabrics to include post-consumer recycled polyester for the technical component of the fiber. So it's a natural blend, natural fibers, cotton in this case, blended with a technical fiber which is made of polyester. Can we make it post-consumer recycled polyester? Yes, the ability is there, but it's a small business. My God, it's so difficult to get the attention of suppliers to come with you on that innovation curve, and I've gotten so many brick walls. We're not sure we can get the quality. It takes 6 months when it could really take 3. We know it exists. So that's quite frustrating. It takes a lot of emotional energy to get through, but we're on it, and we're going to do it. And then the last thing I'll throw in there is, our big dream is, can we be a circular economy business? I have no idea how to get there, but certainly we are starting to look at things like investing in, if people want or have to get certain things fixed, like a button comes, we're already investing in reinforced buttons and things like that, but if you need something fixing, we'll put some money towards that. And then of course, we'd love to take back your stuff and figure out what to do with it next. Let's become a B Corp, I'll add that to the list.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Susan, any questions from the audience?
So if someone does nothing, like what's some takeaway for especially women business owners or maybe people who are going to start out to either do, take, bear in mind, just a little nugget would be so helpful.
So we have a section of our website at the bottom. If you go, it goes down. It has referrals and resources. So we've got a whole page of financial resources because we get asked this question a lot, and we can't help everyone. So I was like, we got to put it all out there so people can access. So there's a bunch of stuff there for personal finance.
What's your web URL?
Oh, I'm sorry, modernistfinancial.com. It's such a good question. I think it's just being fucking scrappy, honestly, because capital is such a problem for women. And I don't know if you were here for the Accelerate conversation, but it's a huge issue. So I think getting together with the resources, using the social capital you have, and ask for other people's social capital. Because social capital is really, in my mind, the biggest issue with the patriarchy, right? Is they need to learn how to share. And go out to dinner with a woman after 6 p.m. and it not be creepy. So I think that's a big part of it, is learn your basics of how money works, which there's lots of resources there, and then get that social capital.
Great, thank you. One other question. Yeah.
It's the same line. Do you offer any kind of classes or any community classes or anything that we can get together and come and see?
We offer a 4-hour workshop that's third financial life planning, like emotional relationship with money, and 2/3 how to manage your cash flow. We offer it through nonprofits, so if you know a nonprofit that wants to host us and can get 25 people in a room, we will do it in a heartbeat. We also do it through the Center for Women's Leadership, and then there's an organization in town called Melanated that we're doing one in January for. So we want to do these events, so please, if you know a nonprofit that would want to host us and has a group of people, all day, every day.
And Susan, I'm pretty sure that we can probably figure that out between finding a nonprofit and everybody that's here right now who might be interested. So we'll see if we can work that out afterwards. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you, Kelly, Peppa, and Georgia.